On our 25th anniversary, my wife stood up and announced, "I'm divorcing you from now on. Talk to my lawyer," so I went to her law firm. When I said, "Yes, I'm her husband," the senior partner rushed out. His face turned white as a sheet because
I sat there, holding the small velvet box in my hands, feeling the weight of 20 years pressing down on me. The restaurant buzzed with warmth, soft candlelight flickering, the clinking of glasses, murmured laughter. Our closest friends and family surrounded us, celebrating what I thought was a milestone in our journey together. Sarah looked stunning. She always did. Her blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders, her emerald dress hugging her figure just right. I watched her, feeling that familiar pull in my chest. The same pull I'd felt 2 decades ago when I first saw her across the room at a college party. I was about to stand, about to pull the small box from my pocket and make my little speech. Something about how love changes but never fades. About how I wanted to renew our vows and keep choosing her, every day, forever. And then she did it. She stood first, raising her champagne glass high, her nails glistening under the light. I smiled, expecting some sweet toast about our years together, maybe a teasing jab about my snoring. Instead, she said 6 words that turned my world to ash. "I filed for divorce this morning." The restaurant fell silent. Forks scraped against plates. Someone coughed. My heart stuttered in my chest. A split-second lag between reality and comprehension. I let out a short laugh, nervous, disbelieving. A joke? A mistake? Sarah's expression didn't change. Her lips curled into a polite, practiced smile, her emerald eyes scanning the room. But she wasn't looking at me. She was making an announcement. "From now on," she continued, her voice cool and composed, "all questions go through my lawyer." A ripple of gasps and whispers spread through the guests. My fingers clenched around the box, my knuckles whitening. My body felt like it had been dunked in ice water, every nerve going numb at once. This wasn't happening. "Sarah?" My voice came out hoarse, unsteady. "What the hell are you talking about?" She turned her gaze to me then, calm, detached, as if I were a stranger. "You heard me," she said softly, and then she took a slow sip of champagne. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A wave of humiliation crawled up my spine as I felt dozens of eyes on me. Our anniversary, our 20 goddamn years together, and she had turned it into this. A public execution, a spectacle. I could feel the stares, the whispered questions. Some guests looked uncomfortable, their hands gripping their drinks tighter. Others leaned in, hungry for more, eyes gleaming with the kind of sick curiosity that feeds on destruction. My best friend, Matt, shifted beside me, his jaw tight. He was watching me, waiting for me to react, waiting for me to explode. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The velvet box in my hand suddenly felt stupid, small, pathetic. I had been about to propose renewing our vows, and she had already signed divorce papers. My throat tightened. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a mistake. She had planned this. I looked at her again, really looked at her, and something in my stomach twisted. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't emotional. She was in control. This wasn't just about leaving me. This was about crushing me. I swallowed hard, my voice coming out in a whisper. "Why?" She smiled then, just the barest, cruelest flicker of amusement. "You'll find out soon enough." And then she turned her back on me, raised her glass higher, and toasted. "To new beginnings." The guests hesitated. Some lifted their glasses, uncertain, awkward. Others didn't move at all. I just sat there, my world burning around me, the weight of 2 decades collapsing into a single, brutal moment. Sarah took a sip, set her glass down, and walked away. I didn't follow her. Couldn't. The morning after my public execution, I woke up in an unfamiliar kind of silence. A heavy, suffocating quiet, the kind that settles after an explosion, when the dust hasn't quite cleared, but the damage is already done. For a second, just a second, I forgot. My body moved on autopilot, reaching across the bed toward her side, expecting warmth. But all I found was cold, empty sheets. Then it hit me. Last night wasn't a dream. I sat up, heart pounding, stomach churning, my brain trying to make sense of the wreckage. My wife, no, Sarah, had stood up in front of everyone and detonated our marriage like it was a goddamn confetti cannon at a surprise party. And then she walked away. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand and called her. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. By the fourth call, the automated message changed. The number you are trying to reach has been disconnected or is no longer in service. Disconnected. Less than 12 hours after the announcement, she had cut off all communication. My blood ran cold. I threw the covers off and got up, pacing the room. Maybe she blocked me. Maybe she was just being dramatic. I went downstairs, expecting to find some kind of note, an explanation, anything. Nothing. The kitchen looked untouched. The fridge was still stocked, her coffee mug from yesterday still in the sink. If not for the empty side of the closet upstairs, you wouldn't even know she was gone. I needed answers. The bank. Of course. I threw on clothes and drove straight there, barely able to keep my hands steady on the wheel. I kept telling myself it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe she just needed space. Maybe this was some kind of twisted mind game, some legal maneuvering bullshit. I was so wrong. The teller barely made eye contact as she typed in my account number. Then she frowned. Typed again. Checked something on the screen. A bad feeling crawled up my spine. Sir, she said, glancing up at me. There's nothing in this account. I blinked. What? She turned the monitor slightly, pointing at the balance. $0. I let out a stunned laugh. No, that's not right. I had savings in there. Retirement funds. My paycheck comes in bi-weekly. Check again. She pursed her lips, clicked a few more times, then said, the withdrawals were made yesterday. Transferred out. Completely cleared. A roaring filled my ears. Yesterday. The same day she pulled her little stunt. I gripped the edge of the counter. Where were they transferred to? I'm afraid I can't disclose that. I could barely breathe. Sarah took it. She took everything. The bank account wasn't just empty, it was wiped. No warnings. No alerts. No notifications. She must have done this weeks ago, slowly draining funds, making sure I wouldn't notice. Panic turned to rage. I stepped away from the counter, pulling out my phone to check the house deed. I knew the mortgage was in both our names. I knew we signed the paperwork together. Didn't we? I opened the documents and started scrolling. And then I saw it. The name on the deed. Sarah Reynolds. Only Sarah Reynolds. The house wasn't mine. Not legally. Not anymore. Somewhere between our refinancing and simplifying paperwork, she had shifted the ownership entirely into her name. I stumbled back, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. She planned this. Every damn step. This wasn't an emotional decision. This wasn't a midlife crisis. This was calculated. My stomach churned, nausea clawing up my throat. 20 years. 20 years of trust, of thinking I knew the woman I built a life with. And she had spent God knows how long erasing me. I looked around the bank, at the people going about their day, clueless to the fact that my entire existence had just been wiped clean like a stain on a tablecloth. Sarah wasn't just leaving me. She was erasing me, and I had no idea why, but I was damn sure going to find out. I drove straight to her law firm, my pulse pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The rage had settled now, replaced by something colder, something sharper. She planned this. She gutted our finances, cut off all communication, and legally erased my claim to the house. But she wasn't acting alone. No, this level of precision took guidance. Someone had helped her, her lawyer, and I was about to meet the bastard face to face. The building was sleek, modern, glass doors, polished stone floors, the kind of place that smelled like expensive cologne and quiet corruption. A receptionist sat behind a marble desk, tapping away at her keyboard. When I approached, she barely glanced up. Do you have an appointment? I need to see my wife's lawyer, I said, voice steady. Now. She sighed like I was a mild inconvenience and flipped open a scheduling book. And your name? Jack Reynolds. Her fingers froze on the keyboard. She looked up at me then. Really looked. Something flickered across her face. Something unnatural. Not just surprise. Not just confusion. Fear. I felt it before she even spoke. A shift in the air like the temperature in the room had dropped. She swallowed, her throat bobbing slightly, then without another word, reached for the phone. He's here, she whispered into the receiver. Silence. Then a pause. Then a slow exhale from whoever was on the other end. Tell him to wait in the conference room, the voice said. I could barely make it out, but there was something in the tone that sent a chill down my spine. The receptionist hesitated. Her eyes darted to mine, uncertainty flickering behind them. Then she nodded. Understood. She hung up, then gave me a tight, nervous smile, like she was forcing it, like she was trying to pretend she hadn't just made the weirdest phone call of her life. The senior partner will see you shortly, she said. Please follow me. The way she hesitated on that last part told me everything. I wasn't just some jilted husband coming in to demand answers. I wasn't just another case file. They knew who I was, and that terrified them. She led me down a hallway, my footsteps echoing against the marble floor. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me. Something is wrong. But I had no choice but to walk into it. She opened the door to a conference room, huge, expensive, designed to intimidate. A massive glass table, leather chairs, a skyline view, and then she left, shutting the door behind me. I stood there, fists clenched, waiting. I wasn't waiting long. The door swung open again, and a man walked in. Not just any man, the senior partner. And the moment he saw me, his face turned white as a sheet. The door swung open with force, like someone had shoved it rather than gently pushing it aside. A tall man in a tailored charcoal suit stood in the doorway, his grip still tight on the handle as if he needed something to hold on to. Silver-streaked hair, sharp features, the kind of presence that normally commanded a room. But right now he looked like he'd seen a ghost. His eyes locked onto me, and in that instant, his entire demeanor shifted. First, his brows creased in confusion. Then his lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to speak but had forgotten how. And then panic. Genuine, raw panic. I'd seen this reaction before, but not in boardrooms or negotiations. I'd seen it in emergency rooms. The exact moment someone realizes they are about to lose everything. He inhaled sharply. His voice, when it finally came, was barely above a whisper. You are Sarah's husband? My muscles tensed. Everything inside me screamed that this was wrong. Not surprise, not curiosity, fear. He already knew my name. The receptionist had told him who I was. And yet, he still needed to see me to believe it. I took a slow step forward. Yeah, I'm Jack Reynolds. My voice was steady, controlled. And you must be the man who helped my wife rob me blind. The color drained further from his face. He looked down for half a second, like he needed to recalculate something. I didn't realize, he murmured. I didn't. He cut himself off. I narrowed my eyes. Didn't realize what? I took another step closer, slow, deliberate. Didn't realize what, exactly? He blinked rapidly, his gaze darting to the closed door behind me. Like maybe, just maybe, he could bolt out of here if this went south. But I wasn't letting him off the hook. You helped my wife move everything out from under me, I continued. You think I wouldn't show up? He inhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. His suit was perfectly tailored, his shoes polished, but in that moment, he looked disheveled. Like he'd just been yanked out of a nightmare and hadn't figured out how to wake up. I can't. He stopped again, exhaling. Listen, Mr. Reynolds. Maybe we can settle this another way. I stiffened. Another way? My fists clenched at my sides. Oh, don't worry, I said, my voice low. I came here ready to fight. I'm not walking away empty-handed. But his reaction wasn't what I expected. He let out a short, nervous laugh. Not the kind that says I've got this under control, but the kind that happens when someone knows they've screwed up and can't see a way out. Then he did something that sent ice through my veins. He took a step back. Not out of anger. Not out of defiance. Out of fear. What the hell was he so afraid of? I squared my shoulders, my voice dropping. Tell me what's going on. He swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the chair across from me. You need to leave, he said quietly. I froze. What? His hands trembled slightly as he straightened his tie. He forced himself to meet my gaze. Mr. Reynolds, you don't understand what you've walked into. A slow chill crawled up my spine. I kept my voice steady. Then explain it to me. He shook his head. I can't. I felt something shift inside me. I came here for a fight, but now I had the distinct feeling I had just walked into something much, much bigger than a divorce. I took a breath, locking eyes with him. I'm not leaving, I said. Not until you tell me why the hell you look like you've just seen a ghost. The senior partner exhaled shakily. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, because last time, the husband didn't come back. I stood there, the weight of his words pressing against my chest like a steel beam. Because last time, the husband didn't come back. The room felt smaller, tighter. The air thickened with something invisible, something wrong. I didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at him. And that's when it happened. His entire posture shifted. He straightened his tie again, squared his shoulders, and forced a mask of professionalism over his panic. It was subtle, but I caught it. A desperate attempt to shove something monstrous back into the shadows. Mr. Reynolds, he said, his voice smoother now, more controlled. I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. I narrowed my eyes. No, I think we got off on exactly the foot we were supposed to. A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. He gestured toward the chair across from him. Please, sit. I didn't. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. Listen, this is just a divorce case. I understand emotions are high, but there's no need for hostility. Hostility? I took a slow step toward the table. Hostility would be me flipping this goddamn table and demanding answers. My voice was low, controlled. What I'm giving you is an opportunity. His jaw clenched. An opportunity for what? For the truth. Silence. A muscle twitched in his cheek. He exhaled sharply and placed both palms flat on the table, like a man trying to steady himself. Mr. Reynolds, he started carefully. This doesn't have to be messy. We can settle this quietly, easily. I said nothing. You want assets? Money? Fine. We can arrange something. Something fair. His words were measured, rehearsed, but his fingers twitched. He was lying. I could feel it now, the push. He was pushing me to walk away, to take the scraps they were willing to give me and leave without asking the wrong questions. I leaned in just slightly, my voice razor sharp. What exactly am I not supposed to dig into? His jaw tightened. I never said that. You didn't have to. The flicker of panic returned to his eyes. He adjusted his tie again. Third time. Nervous tick. I wasn't just making him uncomfortable. I was making him sweat. Jack, he said, his voice suddenly softer, almost pleading. I am strongly advising you to sign the papers. Walk away. He only called me Jack because he wanted me to think we were on the same side. Like he was doing me a favor. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't just afraid for himself. He was afraid for me. I studied him, my mind moving fast, collecting details, rearranging them into something that made sense. Sarah had planned this. Every piece, every angle, every move. And this man wasn't her lawyer. He was her cleanup crew. How many times had he done this before? How many husbands had walked through these doors thinking they were about to fight a divorce case, only to realize they weren't supposed to fight at all? They were supposed to disappear. I straightened, my heart hammering. I wasn't walking away. Not now. Not ever. I needed to know. Mr. Reynolds. His voice was careful again, like he knew he was losing control of the conversation. Take my advice. Just sign the papers. I tilted my head slightly, studying him. Then, slowly, deliberately, I pulled out a chair and sat down. Not until you tell me what happened to the last guy. The senior partner inhaled sharply through his nose. And for the first time since I stepped into this room, he looked truly, completely terrified, because he knew I wasn't going anywhere. The senior partner closed his eyes for a moment, as if he were silently debating whether to lie or run. When he opened them again, he looked exhausted. I leaned forward. Talk. He exhaled through his nose, his jaw clenching like he was bracing for impact. Then he slowly, reluctantly, slid into the chair across from me. I can't tell you much, he murmured. Try me. A long silence stretched between us. Then, with visible hesitation, he reached into the drawer and pulled out a file. Thick, worn, too old to have anything to do with my case. My pulse spiked. He placed it on the table between us but didn't open it. Just stared at it. like it was radioactive. I didn't wait. I flipped it open, and that's when my stomach dropped. The name on the top of the page wasn't mine. It was hers, Sarah Reynolds. Except, it wasn't, because right under that name, typed in neat, sterile legal font, was something else. Formerly, Sarah Whitmore. My fingers gripped the edge of the folder. What the hell is this? The senior partner rubbed his temples. It's a prenuptial agreement. A prenup? That didn't make sense. We never signed one. Then I saw the date. It was signed 2 years before I met her. With another man. I turned the page, scanning for details. And then, there it was. Her husband's name. Not ex-husband. Just husband. Christopher Whitmore. My mouth went dry. I had been married to this woman for 20 years. I knew everything about her. Where she grew up, her college years, her family. At least I thought I did. Because never, not once, had she ever mentioned a Christopher Whitmore. I flipped through the papers faster now, my pulse hammering in my ears. There was a section about assets. Christopher had been wealthy. Very wealthy. I skimmed further. And then I saw the last legal filing attached to the prenup. A death certificate. My entire body went rigid. It wasn't just divorce she had planned before. It was something else. My hands tightened around the papers. Where is he? My voice was barely above a whisper. The senior partner didn't answer. I slammed the file shut. Where the hell is he? The man across from me swallowed. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse. We never found out. I went ice cold. You're telling me this man, her husband, just vanished? His fingers drummed against the desk. A nervous tick. We assumed. He hesitated. We assumed he left. I stared at him. He didn't believe that. Not for a second. He knew something else. I shoved the file back toward him. How long before she married me? He exhaled. A year. A year. A single year. She had been someone else's wife. Then she was a widow. And then, 12 months later, she was my wife. I had been married to her for 20 years. But I had been a target for 21. A slow, creeping horror spread through my chest. This wasn't a messy divorce. It wasn't about money. This was a pattern. And if her first husband disappeared, what the hell had she planned for me? I left the law firm feeling like my insides had been scraped out with a dull knife. The file. The name change. The missing husband. The way the senior partner had looked at me like I was already a dead man walking. I got into my car, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Sarah had been married before. That wasn't the part that terrified me. The part that terrified me was that her last husband vanished. And now, she was making damn sure I disappeared too. Legally, financially, maybe worse. I had to find him. I didn't know if Christopher Whitmore was dead, missing, or buried 6 feet under a new identity. But I knew one thing. If I didn't get ahead of this, I might end up like him. I spent the next few days drowning in paperwork, phone calls, and dead ends. I hired a lawyer, not one of Sarah's slick corporate types, but a bulldog. A guy named Dean Carter. He specialized in cases that didn't want to be solved. Ex-prosecutor, disbarred once for getting too aggressive with a judge. Reinstated a year later because even the court knew they needed a guy like him. Dean looked through Sarah's history with the kind of expression usually reserved for serial killers. You said you were married 20 years? He asked, flipping through the documents I stole from the law firm. Yeah. He let out a low whistle. She's got a hell of a clean record. Too clean. Like it was scrubbed. That hit me in the gut. Scrubbed how? Dean tapped his pen against the file. Look at this. College transcripts. Standard. Employment history. Spotty but reasonable. But the minute you start looking for real personal records, medical history, old addresses, any kind of traceable identity before she met you, it's like she just appeared. My blood ran cold. People don't just appear, I muttered. Dean smirked. Exactly. Which means someone made sure her past was wiped. A beat of silence passed between us. Then he sat back and gave me a look. The real question, Jack, is why? I already knew why. Because there was something in that past she couldn't afford me finding. And now I was going to tear it wide open. The first thing I learned was that Christopher wasn't just some guy. He had been wealthy. Old money. His family owned real estate up and down the East Coast. Private properties, offshore investments, the kind of wealth that didn't show up in Forbes but ran deep in the country's economy. His marriage to Sarah had barely been mentioned in any of his family's public records. It was like a footnote, a blip. And then, 1 year before I met her, he vanished. Not died. Not moved away. Vanished. No missing persons report. No official police investigation. Just gone. And then I found it. A signature. Christopher Whitmore's last legal act was signing a set of documents 6 weeks before his disappearance. The same kind of documents Sarah made me sign when we refinanced the house. It was a quiet shift of assets. A transfer. A restructuring of investments. And then, nothing. I stared at his name on the paper, bile rising in my throat. Sarah had done this before. She didn't just rob me. She had hunted me. Christopher Whitmore had been her first. I was supposed to be her second. And if he never walked away from this, how the hell was I supposed to? My phone rang at 2:37 a.m. I was sitting in the dark, staring at the file spread across my kitchen table, trying to piece together 20 years of lies. I hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Christopher Whitmore's name. I saw mine next to it. The screen lit up. No caller ID. I knew who it was before I even answered. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Then slowly I picked up. I didn't speak. For 3 full seconds there was only breathing. Then her voice. "You don't know what you're doing." I exhaled sharply, forcing down the rage crawling up my throat. "Funny. I was about to say the same to you." She was silent for a beat. Then, a short, brittle laugh. Not confident. Not composed. Strained. "So this is what you're doing now?" she murmured. "Playing detective?" My fingers curled into a fist on the table. "You tell me, Sarah. Or should I say Sarah Whitmore?" The silence that followed was thick. For the first time since this started, I had thrown her off balance. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. No more amusement, just low, coiled panic. "Jack, stop." I almost laughed. "That's rich. You stole everything from me, erased me from my own goddamn life, and now you're giving me orders. You don't understand what you're getting into." "Oh, I think I do." "No," she sucked in a sharp breath. "No, you really, really don't." Something in her tone sent a chill down my spine. She wasn't mocking me anymore. She wasn't toying with me. She was afraid. And that scared me more than anything. I sat back, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You're panicking, Sarah. I'm warning you. You don't warn people unless they have something on you." Another pause. This one longer, heavier. Then, her voice softened. "Jack, just walk away. Take whatever settlement you want. But stop digging." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, now you're generous? You emptied my accounts, left me with nothing, tried to make me disappear. But the second I start asking questions, you're throwing settlements at me?" She inhaled sharply, and when she spoke again, there was a tremor in her voice. "If you keep digging, you're finished." That was it. Not a threat. Not a promise. A fact. A certainty. Like she had seen it happen before. Like she had seen it happen to Christopher Whitmore. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "Tell me what happened to him." "Nothing." I heard her breathing, fast and shallow. Then she hung up. I sat there, staring at the dead screen, my pulse hammering. She was afraid. Sarah never panicked. Never cracked. Which meant one thing. I was getting too close. I met him in a rundown bar on the outskirts of town. The kind of place where the lights were dim, the booths were cracked leather, and the bartender didn't ask questions. Dean had pulled a few strings, made some calls, and finally tracked down a man who knew Christopher Whitmore. A man who had watched him vanish. He was already there when I walked in, nursing a whiskey. Late 50s, wiry frame, weathered face. He didn't look up when I sat across from him, just stared into his glass like it held something more than alcohol. "You're him, huh?" he muttered. "The new husband." My stomach twisted. "Not anymore." That got a dry chuckle out of him. He took a sip of his drink, then exhaled. "You want to know about Chris?" "Yeah." He finally looked up. His eyes were tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from a long day. It comes from carrying something awful for too long. "She wanted him gone," he said. "And then he was gone." A chill ran down my spine. Gone how? He tapped his fingers against the glass. Depends on who you ask. I leaned forward. I'm asking you. A long pause. Then finally he spoke. Chris met her fast. Married her even faster. One day he was this rich prick who had everything: money, power, a future. Next thing I know, he's a ghost. Stopped showing up to meetings, stopped calling friends. When I finally tracked him down, he trailed off, shaking his head. Different. Like he wasn't himself anymore. My pulse pounded. What do you mean? He stared at me, then dropped his voice lower. He wasn't Chris anymore. He was someone else. A strange pressure built in my chest. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, the man muttered. That's what I thought too. But she had her hooks in him. Twisted things around. His money, his businesses, his identity. It was like she was rewriting him piece by piece. Until there was nothing left. I swallowed hard. And then, he took another sip of whiskey. And then one day he signed some papers. And disappeared. No body. No investigation. Just gone. The room felt smaller. I thought back to the files. To the last signature before his vanishing act. The same type of documents I had signed. My hands curled into fists. You think she killed him? He exhaled through his nose. I think he stopped being useful. I felt my stomach drop. Sarah had planned this. She had chosen Christopher for a reason. And when she was done with him, when he wasn't convenient anymore, she had erased him. And then, a year later, she had found me. The man slid something across the table. Keycard. I frowned. What's this? He finally looked me in the eyes. It's the last place he went before he disappeared. I picked it up, staring at the faded logo. Some kind of private facility. Something deep in my gut told me I wasn't going to like what I found there. But I didn't have a choice. Sarah had already erased one husband. I wasn't going to be the second. I stepped into my house, and immediately, I knew. Something was wrong. The air felt heavier. Not like someone had just been here, but like something had shifted. I had left in a hurry. Papers, notes, Christopher Whitmore's file. I had everything spread out on the kitchen table. But now, as I walked in, my pulse hammering against my ribs, I saw it. Someone had been here, and they had left me a gift. A single manila envelope sat neatly in the center of the table. Not mine. I hadn't left it there. I swallowed hard, my fingers curling into fists. Slowly, I stepped forward, my breath shallow as I picked it up. My name was scrawled across the front in her handwriting. Sarah. The same hand that had once left me love notes, birthday cards, anniversary messages. Now it was leaving this. I peeled it open, heart pounding. And then I froze. Inside were photographs. Of me. In places I hadn't even realized I had been watched. Parking lot. Cafe. A storage facility. And one that made my blood run ice cold. A dead body. I had never seen the man before. His face was slack, lifeless, eyes staring at nothing. But there I was, in the next frame, standing in the distance, caught in the same shot. The realization slammed into me like a freight train. This wasn't just a divorce. Sarah was setting me up. She didn't just want me gone. She wanted me to disappear, just like Christopher. I staggered back, gripping the envelope so hard it nearly crumpled in my hands. This was her endgame. Erase my money, my assets, my identity, and then, when the time was right, erase me. Every instinct screamed at me to move. I grabbed my car keys, the file, the keycard from the man at the bar. I had to go. Because whatever Sarah had done to Christopher, she was about to do it to me, and I was running out of time. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs, the tension hanging in the air like a storm about to break. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands gripping the edge, my breath slow and controlled. In front of me, neatly stacked, was everything. The files, the fraudulent signatures, the evidence she left in my own house. The photographs, the paper trail, the missing first husband. It was all here. I had spent 20 years thinking I knew the woman I married. But today I was going to bury her. The judge entered, the bailiff called the court to order. Sarah's lawyer sat across from me, calm, composed, except for the way he kept glancing at the door. Sarah wasn't here. I felt something shift in my gut. She was supposed to be here. The woman who had orchestrated every move, manipulated every legal loophole, erased me from my own goddamn life. She wouldn't just miss this. I glanced at my lawyer, Dean, who gave me a barely perceptible nod. He was thinking the same thing. Something was off. Then, the doors at the back of the courtroom burst open. A man in a dark suit hurried in, went straight to Sarah's lawyer and leaned down. A whispered exchange. A stiffening of shoulders. Then panic. The lawyer stood abruptly. "Your Honor, my client." He hesitated, licking his lips. "My client will not be attending today's proceedings." The murmurs in the courtroom swelled. Dean leaned toward me, voice low. "We got her." I kept my expression blank, but inside, my pulse pounded. The judge raised an eyebrow. "And why is that?" The lawyer hesitated again. Then finally he gave up. "She has been detained." Silence. Then, across the room, the doors opened again. This time it was the police. 2 officers strode in, their expressions grim, and handed a file to the judge. He flipped through the pages, his face darkening with every turn. Finally he looked up. "What is this?" One officer cleared his throat. "A warrant for the arrest of Sarah Reynolds." Or, he shot me a glance. "Sarah Whitmore." A sharp collective inhale rippled through the courtroom. The judge's gaze snapped back to the lawyer. "Would you care to explain?" Sarah's lawyer was sweating now. His carefully crafted facade cracked wide open. "Your Honor, I was unaware of this development." "Unaware?" The judge repeated, voice cold. The officer stepped forward. "We have reason to believe Mrs. Reynolds attempted to flee the country early this morning." I exhaled sharply. Of course she did. She had set me up, orchestrated my downfall, and the second she realized I wouldn't go quietly, she ran. But she didn't make it. I let that sink in. The predator had finally found herself trapped. The officer continued. "Upon searching her residence, we uncovered multiple falsified documents, offshore accounts, and," he hesitated. Then he looked directly at me. "And evidence linked to the disappearance of Christopher Whitmore." The room erupted. Gasps. Murmurs. The judge banged his gavel for silence. But I barely heard any of it. Christopher Whitmore. They found something. I clenched my jaw, every muscle in my body tense. For years, Sarah had buried the truth, had erased her past, had gotten away with everything. Not anymore. Dean smirked beside me. "Looks like your wife's gonna have a hard time lawyering her way out of this one." I exhaled, finally, as the judge turned back to me. "Mr. Reynolds, given these developments, I believe we have ample cause to proceed in your favor." I nodded, forcing down the lump in my throat. It was over. Sarah was done. The last time I saw her was in handcuffs. They brought her into a side courtroom for the formal charges. Her once perfectly tailored clothes were wrinkled, her hair pulled back hastily, her wrists bound in steel. And then she looked up. Her eyes met mine. For the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't in control. She wasn't calculating, wasn't manipulative. She was just caught. I saw it clear as day, the moment she realized she had lost, that I had survived, and that for the first time in her life she wouldn't be walking away.
After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. ****